Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pash On Podcast. Let's get started with your host, Brian Pash.
Hi, this is Brian Pash, and welcome to another podcast. On today's show, I have Mike Annable. He is the founder and CEO of ROI Detective and one of the rising stars in automotive analytics and measurement. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian.
So, Mike, I said rising star, but you've been in the industry for a long time. You've just kind of been on my radar as I've been watching your helpful posts on LinkedIn. For people on today's podcast listening to us, can you give us a little background? How long have you been in the auto industry and what companies have you been associated with?
So it was actually the early 2000s. I'm 51 years old, so I've been working the internet actually since 1994, so I'm a dinosaur. I started off as internet director for a very small group in Central Florida back in, I don't even know what year it was maybe 2003, 2004. And that was back when the internet first really came out. Dealers were just starting to get websites. They were having launch parties, with the thought of, we're going to sell millions of cars. Everyone was very joyous.
Yeah.
Right. And I know you were around back then, Brian. So I've been through the whole ride. And during my time at that, it was about a year I was there. They had no budget, very small dealership, very, just buried in Central Florida. And, that's when I started thinking kind of on the vendor side. So at the time, I started a company called Showroom Logic, which grew up pretty big, only because we were one of the first ones that got into paid search for car dealers. So during that time, we had investors, we had 1,500 clients. I was the quiet guy. I did go to the digital dealers, but I didn't have, my title was always co-founder, managing partner, because I was more the quality control guy, and I spent most of my time just buried in analytics at the time. And since then, we didn't have Data Studio back then. We didn't have Google Tag Manager back then. Since then, I just learned all the questions I've been asking myself for years, and all the time I've had to look at accounts just really helped me bring it to the next level with Data Studio. And it's just the beginning. There's so much more that we can do with it.
I agree, Michael. One of the focuses of my business has been to educate dealers on how digital marketing works, what type of strategies work, and one of those key foundational elements is measurement. Michael, we have a lot of different topics to talk about. One thing I still don't understand is that we don't sell cars today in scale online. What we do is we get consumer interested, they call us, they text, they chat with us, they fill out a lead form. Michael, how do you explain the fact that so many agencies selling digital services to dealers don't make sure that the dealer's Google Analytics account has all of the conversion goals, those hard conversion goals set up?
One of the most common problems that's happening today is a lot of vendors are setting up their own analytics. So the problem is when someone looks at, if a dealer called me or you or anyone else say, hey, we take a look at analytics, are they even giving us the right analytics to look at? There's companies out there who have landing pages that are like subdomains. If those analytics aren't connected, you can't see the data. There's a lot of iframes going on in today's space. So I think that's the biggest problem is I think every dealer needs to look at, some of them have 5 or 6 different analytics accounts. And I think the object is pick one and make sure that you're aware that this is the one you want to use. And any other vendor that's, if they're going to add events to your analytics or whatever the case is, then they should use this analytics. They can still use their own and everyone has their own philosophies on what measuring is, but I think we all need to agree, all right, these are the goals we want, and we want to make sure all the vendors are connected to this one analytics account, and then they can still have their own to kind of, disprove what we might think or whatever the case is.
Yeah, the one of the nice things about Google Analytics, it allows dealers and their agency partners to create views. It's not uncommon for me when a dealer gives me access to analytics and I go in and there's 6 views and well, they're all incomplete. So I end up calling up the dealer and I say, "Hey, which view is the view that you're using?" And of course, oftentimes that just ends in confusion. So I recommend that dealers put the word primary in the view name. So instead of all website data, I know LotLinks creates their own view, VistaDesk creates their own view, agencies create their own view. Well, I always recommend that dealers create a view that says primary. And then this way, that one has all the goals set up properly, and then each individual vendor can do their own thing. Michael, when you think of the amount of money that dealers are spending on digital. And since you've been there since the beginning, like myself, dealers were told back in 2000 when AdWords first came out that digital marketing will make their marketing more efficient. It will lower their cost per retail sale. But recent data from NADA over the last 7 years has shown that the cost per retail sale has not gone down. Why do you think, as dealers have moved more money into digital, their advertising costs have not been more efficient?
So I think we're under the impression, first of all, I know of a group about a year and a half ago, they decided to go all digital. And they learned very quickly that that was a big mistake. They stopped doing anything other than digital. And obviously their sales side is declining, so they changed their mind pretty quick. So I think we're under the assumption that, because of the technology these days, that a lot of things can be tracked. There's so many factors and variables, like, the whole Safari update. So I've been a quality guy for years now. Ever since Safari first started messing with that third-party cookie, which was almost 2 years ago, that's when I really started saying, all right, I give up trying to figure out these people, like by the user ID. And I gave up on just measuring calls and contact forms, because let's face it, back in the day, we used to get crazy contact forms, but less people are submitting these type of things we want to submit, and they're just showing up at the dealership. So it's a struggle at the end of the day, it's just marketing, but we have all this cool data to look at. So I'm more of a quality guy. You'll very rarely hear me say the word lead when I'm going over someone's actions. If I have someone that comes to my site and starts looking at used cars, for example, and looks at Carfax reports, things like that, that's a win to me. That's a quality visitor. Doesn't mean they're going to buy from me or my client, but it's definitely a quality visitor. So I pay attention to every source and the quality they bring. And you'd be surprised, everyone means well in the industry, but some people, it's such a big industry that some people are kind of naive when they think what can be done, including the salespeople that sell their product. They believe in it because their CTO said, oh yeah, this is true. But you'd be surprised how fast you can weed out the smaller vendors.
That's right.
We have now selling this proprietary, they're touching your DMS and they're trying to claim. I had one last month that tried to claim 40-something deals from a dealer, and it's like, you didn't sell 40 cars, like you didn't. And this is a deal that sells 150 total a month.
Right.
So, anyways, I can go on about that, but
no, listen, I've been writing about this for 3 years, specifically when Lithia Motor Group challenged me to give them better metrics to measure all their marketing vendors. I published the first automotive event library tracking what consumers do, and I've been evangelizing that for the last 3 years, and it's starting to take hold. Meaning, you're so right, Michael. We can't force a consumer today to fill out a lead form. We as consumers don't fill out many lead forms. We can't force them to call. Our websites have tremendous amounts of information, even penny perfect payment calculators we call digital retailing. Mm-hmm. But what we should be doing is, if I'm investing an ad dollar, am I bringing a net new shopper? What are they doing on my website? Are they looking at photos? Did they download the Carfax? Did they use the payment calculator? Did they compare vehicles? These are all things that shoppers do. Yet most website platforms out of the box don't track consumer click actions. And if they do, they don't create a library that dealers could use to measure engagement. So I'm completely aligned with you, Michael. I don't focus on leads. I focus on quality of engagement. And it's kind of funny. If you focus on quality, you'll get more leads. But if you ask for more leads, you will end up overspending and generating a lot of waste. Do you agree?
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. It's too many people laser focused on calls and contact forms when they're not looking at the other aspects of what and a perfect example, one of my favorite things, I still often write my own tags only because I feel that the industry is behind as far as what events they're pushing. But if let's look at a VDP of any car dealer right now. It loads up. There's a lot of things on there that can be clicked that aren't a new page. So out of the box, you can't measure those in analytics. So I like to use those as engagement. So for example, if they touch any of the tabs, that's an element. I count that as an engagement, including Carfax reports. And when you look at the last month, let's say a Ford dealer, for example, it's going to be no surprise that probably 55 to 60% of all engagements were F-150s. And then you'll see how hard it is to sell the vehicles that don't really sell it, or even to get people engaged in them. Like you'll see me joke a lot about the Ford EcoSport. It's a cool little SUV that Ford has, but they don't really market it. We don't know what it is, and nobody engages in them. So that's a perfect example right there of, I don't like to measure the page to you. I just like to measure if someone interacts with certain elements on that VDP page, including chat, mobile click to call directions, all that stuff.
Yeah, for a number of years, and it started with a study that Cobalt, now CDK, published about if a car gets more VDP views, it moves faster. But everyone forgot what the study really said. It was if they naturally navigated from the homepage or an SRP into the VDP. So dealers have been so bamboozled with VDP counts. I don't think that VDP counts are aligned with sales. Engaged VDP views are absolutely aligned. So if somebody visits a VDP, I don't set a goal for that. That could have been an ad campaign that drove them there. But I look for naturally navigated VDPs and then engaged VDPs. See, dealers are retargeting people using whatever pre-roll or display banners. And I tell them, look, if somebody didn't engage, didn't act like a shopper, why are you chasing them with sales offers? Most likely they just came to the homepage or clicked on your ad to get your phone number, call for service, or call to verify something. And it's really amazing to see dealers' eyes light up when we show them that if you tag your website for shopping actions, you could start to create your own audiences in Google Analytics. You could create your own engagement reporting, which eventually will give dealers the insights they need to move the needle.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. And, I just want to point out one thing a lot of people, I know you're aware of it, but a lot of other people aren't aware of it. Analytics out of the box is based on views. So like you said, there's a lot of vendors that will count the SRP or a VDP view as an engagement, but they're sending, a lot of these paid search campaigns, they're sending the people there. So these people are automatically being triggered as a conversion. The vendor's being looked at as a hero. So I like through Tag Manager, there's a tag called All Link Clicks, which is very easy to install. And there you can pay attention to what people actually click on your site as opposed to what they view. And a perfect example, one of my other favorite engagements is the click to specials, and you can narrow it down to new or used if you want, or even service. But you'd be surprised. I would say the average dealer gets probably 300 visitors a day, but you'd be surprised at the end of the month if you were to measure that. Usually less than 100 people navigate to your specials page. So is it because of the way we have our website? It's so noisy? Is it just because there's realistically only that many people that are actually looking for specials? And there's so many other ways you can look at the data. It's very interesting when you start actually looking at it in a different light as far as clicks go.
Yeah, I mean, the exciting part, Mike, for me is that more and more dealers are asking questions. You've been posting some amazing examples of how Data Studio can take Google Analytics data, and of course, it can take any data. It can take exported data from Cars.com or Trader. It can take exported data from the CRM. But more specifically, you've been doing a lot of posts on LinkedIn, and I encourage our listeners to follow you. What's the feedback you're getting from dealers as you show them that Data Studio is a very, very powerful tool to take complex data and simplify it?
Well, I do get some hate. You'll never see me specifically bash a vendor on LinkedIn. I don't roll like that. But I will kind of, like SEO, I'm very outspoken about dealers paying thousands of dollars for SEO because, if you are, let's measure it, and I'll show you why it's probably not a good return. Most of the golden searches are location-based, and dealers are brick and mortar. So we have to stop thinking that we're an industry that's not, if I was selling little Matchbox cars, for example, and I was shipping, free shipping all over the world, then that's a different story, and that's when SEO is going to be very important to you. But a lot of these searches, especially, remember back in the day, Brian, before analytics did the whole not provided, remember they used to tell us the keywords that people actually used?
That's right, for organic search. Those were the golden days.
Right? What was that, like 6-7 years ago they stopped doing that?
That's right.
I was around back. I was studying it then. I wish I had this stuff now, So I just learned that, they can talk a good talk with this SEO, but at the end of the day, did you get more quality visitors? And you can measure all that, not only through analytics, but you can tie your search console to Data Studio as well. You could pull from your DMS, your CRM, anything you want on your own, and you can merge data. There's so many things you can do, and it's just the beginning of, it's free. Data Studio is free, and sometimes people accuse me of working for Google. I do not work for Google. I just love this product, and I have no affiliation with Google, but let's face it, they're the king, and they're probably going to be for a long time. So I rely on any tool that they'll give me for free, and I will use it to the potential that I'll max it out as best I can.
Well, that's why at the upcoming Automotive Analytics and Attribution Summit, Michael, I invited you to do a full day workshop on Data Studio and then a workshop on the 10 best Data Studio templates. You see, I believe that dealers who have some hands-on folks could benefit from understanding these free tools. Obviously, I built VistaDash and sold that last year to Car Wars because there are many managers that don't want to get in the weeds and they want a turnkey automotive specific package. Both serve the same general need, is to understand marketing data. For example, you mentioned SEO. And one of the things that I've found recently, and I've been adding a new online workshop in our learning center for dealers on Google My Business. Google My Business is so under leveraged. It comes up thousands and thousands of times in metro markets in search. I would say most dealers, when I inspect their Google My Business, they're incomplete. They don't realize now that they can add messaging. They don't know that they can add videos. They don't know they can add products and services. Mike, I think from an SEO strategy, any dealer who hires an SEO company and they don't fully optimize Google My Business is missing the first fundamental tenet that car dealers are local businesses, and Google My Business comes up for local searches and can be expanded if it's set up properly. What are you finding in the field?
I think that is the single most important feature that Google has that's free right now. I know they're talking about charging for it in the future, but I get a lot of calls from really small businesses that, I'm really small, and they can't afford any marketing because they're startups or whatever. So I just give them, a nickel's worth of free advice. First thing to do is, get your My Business situated, learn it, get that thing filled up as close to 100% as you can. I don't confuse them and tell them, to add UTMs and all that because, they'll get lost. But I just say just focus on that first, and then everything else will come in after the fact. So it's a great free tool, and people use it so much, and it keeps changing. I mean, it's just crazy how Google keeps changing it, and I'm patiently waiting. There is a third-party connector available through Supermetrics that will import my business data into Data Studio, but I'm waiting for Google to release their own because I don't like using the third-party tool.
Yeah,
but that would be really awesome.
That would be awesome. And what I've found even more interesting as I've built this online course to teach auto dealers how to optimize and maximize Google My Business, most dealers don't realize they can have a separate listing for their sales department, a separate listing for their service department. They can have a separate listing for their body shop. And some dealers even have an Avis or a Hertz rental car center inside the dealership, especially, as you know, in Florida, there's some huge dealers that have even an insurance company inside the dealership. These all can have a free Google My Business listing. And when synchronized, wow, the visibility is amazing. That's why at the Automotive Analytics and Attribution Summit, which is going to be in Palm Beach again at the Breakers Hotel in November, I'm doing a workshop on Google My Business optimization. So you and I are going to be doing our full day classes on Sunday. I'll be doing Google Analytics. You're going to do Data Studio. And then during the conference on Monday and Tuesday, you're going to be doing your 10 best templates with Data Studio. I'm going to be doing the complete optimization course on Google My Business. It's going to be an amazing show. Mike, when you think of your workshop, of the 10 best uses of Data Studio, your 10 best templates, if there was one that we could talk about that, dealers would understand that's typically a wow for dealership managers, what would it be?
Oh, the PMA for sure, the PMA filter.
Okay, can we explain that to our listeners, what you do in Data Studio to create that? Or, at a high level, what insights does the dealer get from that Data Studio widget?
Well, once I think we've all accepted the fact now that we're brick and mortar, and this is more for new, not used, but, you have a PMA. And, if I look at a pump in, pump out report, or even their CRM data, whatever it is, I'd like to pick any city that they sell more than 1% of the cars to and add it to the PMA. And that you should really be laser focused on that when it comes to new, including your vendors. What vendors are hitting my PMA? And then you can also kind of tell you that, hey, what's up with all this traffic? I'm getting, 100 miles north of here, or even outside of my PMA. I don't sell cars to that. There's a lot of factors in PMA. It's not just geo, it's where people work. Sometimes people will drive by your dealership on the way to work and the way back from work, and they drive 45 minutes to work every day. So there's a lot of factors as far as is it a mobile user, but it's just important. One thing with the PMA is that I can easily identify the cell phone towers, meaning the people that are connected to a cell phone on your website that aren't connected to Wi-Fi are bouncing off the tower. So a perfect example, I live an hour south of Boston. If I visit your website right now and I shut my Wi-Fi off and I go off my Verizon signal, I'm bouncing off a tower in Boston. So analytics will record me as being in Boston and an hour north. So with this case statement, I just basically rewrite, all right, whoever's visiting me from Boston that's on this cell tower, let's call them a cell phone visitor, and let's accept the fact that we really don't know who this person is. But they're engaged. You can check to make sure that they're engaged and things like that. So, but with views in the PMA, every mile you go out, if you're going to do any kind of paid search, every mile you go out in a radius gets very, very expensive. So that's why you'll see I'm a big fan for use of the portal first, and I mean all three of them. CarGurus, Cars.com, AutoTrader. I know there's others as well, but let's face it, those are used car search engines. So Google isn't. No one's going to sit there and keep Googling used make models. They're going to end up on these portal sites. So I know I just went off topic a little bit, but I just want to explain why it's important to focus on new when you're talking about your PMA.
And I appreciate that, because one of the confusing things with Google Analytics is that when they see, like you said, the cell tower traffic, it's a city way far away from, and they're like, oh my God, is my digital agency's targeting screwed up? I'm not advertising there. And of course, that makes sense. Now, what I have seen, Michael, oddly, is dealers with mobile traffic from an adjoining state, which I've heard at times, sometimes the cell tower data gets screwed up. I don't know the truth of that, but dealers should be inspecting where their click traffic is coming from. And I completely agree with you that for used car marketing, the farther you go out, the more expensive it is. And the third-party portals, I know dealers love to hate them, but when you look at the engagement, and I've had the opportunity to do some projects with third-party portals, the engagement on their websites is 3 to 5 times more per VDP than a dealer's own website. There's many reasons for it. Dealers shouldn't hate third-party portals. They should leverage them, understand what their benefits are, and then through a complete marketing strategy, fill the gaps. Mike, you mentioned a story very briefly. I want to pick that up. I'm a firm believer that dealers need to create brand awareness, that most dealers have pushed so hard into click-based media that they've forgotten to create a clear brand promise that resonates with consumers, that is repeatedly viewed. And I'm going to talk about video as my favorite, whether it's a video pre-roll, whether it's really good targeted display, whether it's cable or OTT. I'm finding that if a dealer can create a clear brand promise that resonates with consumers, if it gets the consumer to type in the dealership's name, man, Google gets them to their website for free. And that's efficient to me. Yet so many dealers say, well, I'm 100% digital. And today I tell them, I'm going to pray for you, because that's not what I would do. What do you have to say about that?
Again, that's the whole digital thing. We're so focused on leads, we forget about branding. And again, at the end of the day, everything's advertising, just like it was back in the day before the internet. So I think that brand message is so important. And, I'll give you a perfect example. One of my friends, Sarah Shabana, she's my BDC go-to girl. She used to work for us at Show and Logic back in the day. She had a small General Motors dealership in my neck of the woods. And it was family owned, and they were selling 65 total between new and used. And just by her helping them get their brand out there and their in-store processes, they're selling 100 cars a month now. So I've just by that simple, that was the only thing we can even remotely equate to their increase in sales, is the fact that we got all their messaging into one place, including search. You have so many lines of text you can put on a search ad. You should always have your brand message on every single ad out there, because we're trying too hard to sell instead of educating. It's like raising your hand. Hey, don't forget about us. Family owned. People love that. So again, I can never prove that that's what it was, but it again, we're trying too hard to sell online when we need to focus on branding just a little more.
That's right. And the best brand promise I've found in the country is the Schomp Automotive Group out in Colorado. Their Honda store says one price, one person, 1 hour. Meaning they're a one price store. The advertised price is the price that the consumer is going to pay. When they call the dealership and are introduced to the salesperson, that's the only person they talk to. And that person meets them in the showroom and does the complete deal, including F&I. And after they have picked the car, say after they've test drove a few cars, once they say, this is the car I want, they'll be in and out in an hour. Now, that message repeated in video, on cable, pre-roll, on social media, in display, in their search, makes me get excited for that dealership, because what they've done is they've modernized their brand promise. You remember, Mike, back in the day, dealers would say, we have the largest inventory, but the internet is the largest inventory. Or you could even say cars.com or Car Gurus have the largest inventory. So we have to look at our brand promises, figure out which ones are outdated, and then really get that message out in video. Mike, we are going to wrap up today's podcast, but I wanted to have you on the show because I wanted to recognize your deep commitment to helping dealers understand their data, I encourage all listeners to connect with Mike on LinkedIn, and more importantly, consider sending your team out to the Automotive Analytics and Attribution Summit in Palm Beach. It's November 17th, 18th, and 19th. It's at the beautiful Breakers Hotel. And if our listeners purchase a premium ticket, you can pick to attend on Sunday my full day course on analytics or Mike's full day course on Data Studio. Bring your laptop. Make sure you have access to Search Console, to analytics, to your AdWords accounts. This is going to be a hands-on course where people can really build the skills. Mike's going to be sharing some templates to simplify your introduction to Data Studio. I'll be doing the same thing for analytics, giving you some goal templates, some default channel grouping templates. This is going to be an amazing show. And then the lineup is world class. We start Sunday evening and then go Monday and Tuesday. Mike, if somebody needed help, if there's a dealership today listening to the podcast and would like some help getting some Data Studio templates set up for their analytics, what's the best way to contact you?
Most of the people contact me through LinkedIn, surprisingly, but Mike at ROI Detective is probably the best email to use.
Great. So that's Mike at ROIDetective.com. Mike, I want to thank you for being one of the few people I know that publish consistently on LinkedIn. I try to do the same. And I want to wish you and your company great success in the days to come as we all try to educate dealers to be more data-centric, making smart decisions using their own data. And whether it's Data Studio or the industry's best data preset tool like VistaDash, well, there's lots of opportunities for dealers to get smarter, to be more efficient, and to sell more cars in a digital age. For people who are listening to today's podcast for the first time, every Monday I release a new podcast session. You can listen to past episodes by just going to brianpash.libsyn, that's LIBSYN.com, or on your Apple phone, you can go to podcasts in the iTunes store and just look for the Pash On podcast, and you'll see the entire list of podcasts. Mike, thanks so much for being on today's show, and I look forward to sharing the spotlight with you in November at the AAAS.
Thank you, Brian. Looking forward to it.